We just wanted to give some people, we're starting a few minutes after. We just wanted to give a few folks a minute to get their audio set up before we got started. In terms of platform support, I'm not sure if this is up to date, completely up to date, but on the client side, with our latest release, we support IE9 natively, Visual Studio 2010, which is only needed for the developers who are going to maintain and extend the converted application now. It runs on the latest Windows platforms. And I'll let, when Suresh comes on, if there is additional items that we need to update on here, I'll let him point to that as well. Now with that, we're going to go ahead and go into the demo. Just some things to keep in mind for you, that I want you to keep in mind as you watch the demo, is what we're going to do is we're going to show you a sample notes application and just show you the functionality. It's probably not as complex as some of the ones you have out there, but it will have a lot of the components that, or characteristics or attributes that you have in your more complex apps. So you'll see it has the tree structure and tabs and so forth, and I'll let Suresh go through that. And then we'll actually do the conversion, and it will be a complete conversion of this NSF. And so all of the business logic is brought over, as well as the data and the attachments, as well as that look and feel I was talking about. Again, it is very much a similar look and feel, as much as you can, in the ASP.NET environment. And I think you'll be very impressed with how well it creates that rich notes client over in a browser. And with that, what I'm going to do is I need to make Suresh the presenter for the demo portion and probably unmute him as well. So just give me a second to do that, and then we'll introduce Suresh and bring him over. All right, Suresh, you should be unmuted now, and I made you the presenter, so there we go.
Great, thanks, Matt. So to before I begin the demonstration here, with regards to the platform support, all the information that you guys saw on that slide is current. So we do have the support for 4.0 at this point from our runtime standpoint, and then also for Visual Studio 2010 and SQL Server 2008 from a database standpoint. So let me just go ahead and bring up a sample notes application. So what I'll be doing today is touching upon some of the features of a typical custom notes application. Go through a wizard-driven process within Visual Studio to show you, the tasks that a typical developer would go through in terms of migration of the Lotus Notes application, and then bring up the application from a Visual Studio environment for you to view the user interface and some of the other components that is migrated as part of our technology. So what you're seeing on the screen currently is a sample notes application that we'll be using as part of this particular demonstration. So like Matt mentioned, typically you have outlines or frameworks that are defined for end users to get to the various types of information that's document data within these applications. And the focus here is typical Lotus Notes client applications. So that's the custom applications that are typically targeted for migration using our technology. So from a user interface standpoint, you typically have, views that actually display data in terms of either flat views or, categorized views from a user interface standpoint. You actually have a document data. So if I double click on a specific document within the view, it opens up a form which actually has, in this particular example, a very nice UI that actually has sections and then various types of drop downs and things like that that is actually populated on the fly, based on certain business logic. And then there's also these action commands that actually allow you to do certain workflow-related items on this particular form if the user chooses to do that. And then custom prompts and things like that that actually are automatically as part of certain, client default behavior that is part of these applications. You should also pay close attention to the Lotus Notes client itself, because typically what you might have is there are certain features as part of the Lotus Notes client, especially the search features, the running the agent features, things that are key to how documents are selected and actually interacted upon from a business logic standpoint from an end user perspective. So that's something to keep in mind as I go through the migration here. So typical of any Notes application, the views, the document data, and there is also a security that is actually part of this particular data that you will actually see migrated. So in this case, there are certain application rules that have been defined that will also be brought over as part of the migration. So the landing spots for these applications are typically SQL Server, because most of the application migration projects are to the Microsoft platform. So like Matt mentioned, there are certain things that we don't support if you do choose Oracle, but that's something that we can discuss offline if you do choose Oracle as your repository for storing all the document data. So for this particular demonstration, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create an empty database that will store the documents that I'm going to migrate as part of this process that you will be seeing. So I'm just going to call it a webinar database. I'm just going to click OK. And I'm going to go into Visual Studio right now and go through a wizard process. So typically when you license a product, and install it on a developer PC or laptop, what it does is it actually enables a template within the website creation for you to create Composer websites. So out of the box, it's all Composer websites that are created, and then once you create the website, you can always convert that into a web app as the need may be from your best practices policy, for application management. So I'm going to click OK here, and like I said, it's a wizard-driven process that actually walks you through the various options that we have allowed developers to choose as part of this migration. So to talk a little bit about some of these things, so the first thing that you would specify is the NSF that you want to, want this particular wizard to point to actually do the migration. You have the option to import the data. So if you do have large custom databases that have a lot of data, you have the option to just import a very small sample subset of that production data as part of this developer instance that you're going to create from a migration standpoint. We also have the option to look for any kind of missing fields. If you have the entire data set as part of the initial migration, the tool, what it does is, typically Lotus Notes design, what it allows developers to do is remove fields, as part of the UI or the code, but then the fields do remain as part of the document going forward. So, you don't want to lose any of that old data that you might have as part of those fields that have been restructured or removed as part of the new design from a business standpoint. So we have the option to figure out if there's any kind of missing fields that you would want to incorporate as part of the repository design as part of this migration wizard process. You also have, support for localization. So if you do have language support for other languages other than English, we do have creation of localized files for, converting the messages to the specific language and stuff. And then we also have the support for master pages. So this is typically true when you use a lot of frame sets and things like that, where you want to create a really cool UI as part of the migrated application. So the master pages is what we typically use for that process as part of the migrated applications within .NET. And there is also support for overly embedded objects. At this point, we support only Microsoft Paint objects, but then if there are other custom overly embedded objects that you might have as part of your document data, then that's something that we've got to talk offline in terms of support and cost involved in supporting those kind of objects. And then in terms of, the database support, like Matt was mentioning, we do have SQL and Oracle. So for this particular demonstration, we're going to go through and use SQL Server as our repository. And I'm going to say the database name here is Webinar. That's what we created as part of the SQL console previously. And we have full support for full text indexed as part of the SQL repositories, and we don't have full text index support for Oracle at this point. You have the option to either use SQL Server Security or a integrated Microsoft Windows NTLM security as part of the database for the repositories. So at this point, I'm just going to click on Finish. So we have defined the defaults for the import for the migration standpoint. Then we have also defined our repository. So when I click on Finish, what this is currently doing here is it is actually creating a website within .NET for me within Visual Studio. And it is actually using the DXL generated format of the actual Lotus Notes design and document data, and identifying what it needs to do from a design perspective when it's actually creating the various objects within the Visual Studio project here for me. So it's going to take a couple of minutes depending on the complexity of the particular application. The methodology that was displayed as part of one of the slides, it's a kind of a progressive compile approach for these applications. So depending on the complexity and the level of automated migration, there might be certain manual things that will have to be addressed. And if there are certain things that we do not identify or are able to migrate, we actually tag them as to-dos. Like you can see in this particular example, there are certain to-dos that have been generated for this particular application. So if you look at the task list, there are certain things that from a developer standpoint, so these to-dos are not only just things that are not migrated, but if we feel that there are certain validations, verifications that have to be made by developers in actually verifying the code that's been generated as part of the automated migration, we also tag those as manual activities that the developer will need to go through as part of this compile process. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and build this website. And since we have a very limited time here for this particular demonstration, it's kind of a representation of a typical process for what happens from a developer standpoint. So I'm going to go ahead and so in this particular sample application, there is one compiler that actually has been thrown because there's an ambiguous reference to a field name, because there is a field name by form type within this particular document structure that I'll go through in a minute here. So I'm going to go ahead and fully qualify this particular reference here. I'm going to save this. I'm going to say build this solution all over again. And at this point, it should succeed, like you can see here. And I'm going to go ahead and bring up this particular application within the app server that's from within Visual Studio. So I know that this is a specific form that I can actually bring up. And what you will see in a few seconds here is the application converted out of the box that has converted all the document data into SQL. I will go through the structure of the SQL here in a couple of minutes, but you can actually see how quickly you can actually get to a point where you can actually see the code that's been migrated, look at the actual data that's actually been migrated, support for all the various types of complex UI that is part of these particular applications. Where we do have support for all the flat views, the categorized views, the support for all the various totaling activities on these views, double-clicking options, typical of any Lotus Notes client applications, all the behavior that the end user is used to, where they would double-click and then get to the form. In this case, you're actually seeing the form mode here, and then when you double-click, it actually goes into an edit mode. So these are all things that an end user is used to using a client application. And then remember I was talking about the Lotus Notes client toolbar. So what we have done is we have full support for some of the features that's part of the Lotus Notes client toolbar using the context menus. So depending on the context of the UI, either it be form or UI, form or views, the users have the option to execute certain agents and things like that, and do things like copying document links and stuff for third-party apps. So now, as you can see, the UI is pretty close to what the Lotus Notes app was, and all the existing, the types of user input design objects are migrated and supported. And then you have the option. So let's go ahead and let's say we want to create a new journal entry request here. So in this case, this is all driven off the business logic and multi-valued fields that are within the particular application. And you can actually see, depending on what is chosen here, all the field level validations and verifications are happening, and hides whens are showing up. We have full support for the various hides when options within these particular converted applications, and depending on the security of the user, these hides whens are enabled or disabled. And then here are some prompts allowing the user. So these are all default behavior that is actually coming off the Notes application. And then we have full support for the rich text field. So if there are rich text fields holding attachments, like you saw in that previous example where the PDF and the Word documents are all migrated, we actually do have support for rich text fields, and how end users are used to attaching documents, so they can attach any type of documents within these particular so I'm going to go ahead and save it as a draft, and so you can actually see how quickly you can get to a point where applications are, functionally ready for the developer to make additional enhancements or refinements from a migration standpoint. So that's the advantage that you might have, using our tools to get to a point where all the various framework items that is actually generated as part of this particular applications are all done as part of our solution and provided to you. So there is no so from a Visual Studio standpoint, if you really look at the solution, it's kind of structured very similar to your Lotus Notes design UI, where you actually have the option to get to the forms, views, and things like that. So if you really look at the specific form that we were looking at, the NJE form, which is basically the journal entry form. So you actually have a metadata description of the document in memory of this particular document data that we have generated on the fly for this particular document. And then you have your manager class that actually holds all the business logic that is typically a computed fields, all the various things that you typically have from a business logic standpoint. So let's say you actually have your query save and things like that. So you can actually look at those things. All the field names, all the form names are retained as is, so that when developers are looking at the converted code from a maintenance standpoint, it's very easy for them to relate to and see what it was in the Lotus Notes, Lotus script or formula language, and then what it is here within the particular C# code. So all this is actually very easy to be maintained. We have a number of successful projects that we have completed, and customers are maintaining the generated code from a developer standpoint. And the typical framework that we are talking about is the Notes emulation framework. It basically contains all the typical foundation classes and utility methods for emulating standard Notes functionality. And the reason why we have done that is so that if Notes developers are transitioning into .NET developers, it's very easy for them to utilize some of the previously used Notes functionality within the .NET without actually reinventing the whole thing and trying to figure out what it was and what it is in the new environment. So we do have a full support for as part of our solution support for office automation. We actually use some third-party tools for that, but it is basically for Word and Excel automation. It's basically SyncFusion that we use for that. And So we have full support for all the agents. So we do have support for scheduling them, and how it is scheduled and what, and the intervals at which it needs to be scheduled and who can schedule them and things like that as well. So like you can see, we actually utilize Windows Scheduler, and we have a tool called the Agent Installer that actually helps you install the migrated scheduled agents as Windows tasks from an implementation deployment standpoint. And from a security standpoint, if you really look at what is done, we actually have a tool that will allow you to look at the security. So I'm going to go ahead and open the XML file that is actually generated, for the migrated application here. So just give me 1 second here, and let me just go ahead and open this particular XML file. So what you're seeing here is a UI that is very similar to your ACL maintenance UI within Notes, allowing you to define or add application roles, assign members to it. You even have the option to add members and point to custom LDAP providers or AD here. So it basically acts as a read-only option for you to point to a AD setting from within your web config to pull the AD libraries directly within this ACL manager and then point to it. Then we also have some of the other tools like the data pump that will help you once you go through the migration process and then deploy these applications within your server environments. You would want to refresh the document data to your production set that's within your environment. So what we typically do is we allow you to point to a NSF and then schedule a task for you to import the data. So let me see if I can actually, so I'm going to go ahead and point to the Lotus Notes training database that we used, and you can actually see it identify 264 documents. You can actually provide additional filters if you may choose to for how the data needs to be imported if you choose to do that, or you can do a full import. This is typically helpful. This is very helpful if you want to have certain cutoff dates for, the production data that needs to go into a production environment if you choose to do that. And then you can even go based on specific form data, if you want to choose to do that for the data import. And here, you can specify, whatever SQL Server repository that you have created, and then it actually schedules, the various tasks, and you can execute them one after another. So that's just a quick reference to the ACL Manager and the data pump for, these applications. And then Matt had also mentioned something about the names resolver, and this is important as part of the migration because what you're migrating from a names data for these applications will need to be mapped to an AD environment. So typically what we require administrators on the Lotus Notes side to do is provide an XML dump of the Notes address book and identify a common identifier of data between the Notes environment address book and then the AD environment, so that we could automatically determine and change the data for the common names and abbreviated names and the display names and things like that in the Notes data itself going forward. So that's something that we allow you to do as well using this particular tool, and then it allows you to see things that are not unresolved and then manually change them as part of the data cleanup activities for these migrations. So that's just a quick, high-level overview of, the process, the migration, typically, what a developer would actually go through, and then talking about things that are not migrated. Some of the things to keep in mind are, third-party integration points, Java classes, because we don't automatically migrate any kind of Java or JavaScript web-related elements that's part of these applications using the automated tool. Those are all manual effort because we have our own JavaScript frameworks that the applications will need to run, and so we don't automatically migrate any automatic JavaScript that you might have within these applications. There are also custom work that is involved for any unsupported add commands. So even though we have our framework and the foundation classes for most of the add commands, there might be certain within your environment that we might have to provide support for. Those are things that will have to be manually done depending on what we find within the analyzer and the the review of the applications that you provide for migrations. And then if there are any custom security providers, things like digital signatures that you might use, or if there are any really complex office automation requirements, those are things that will have to be reviewed as part of the analysis, and then determined as to if that's something that we need to provide a fits for, or a funded development from a license perspective, for this technology that we offer. Okay. And from a database standpoint, let's look at some of the the structures that are created. So anything that you see here on the screen that is called Composer means those are all system tables that are created automatically by the tool for us to manage certain states and data from a data perspective. But then anything else, all the form related, so all the forms do get converted into tables, and then we have the fields, columns, the primary keys that are all defined and identified. The Notes ID is typically used as the primary key for most of the tables because that's the unique identifier even within Notes from a data perspective. And then we also have full support for readers and authors fields. So all the hide swims that's actually tied to readers, authors fields are all supported as part of this migration, and a security standpoint, for a document and form level and field level data filtering and display and hides when that is within these applications. And then the field related lengths are all determined based on the data that we see and the field level attributes that are actually set up within the Notes design from a a repository creation standpoint. We do have certain specific tables for composer attachments and composer values and things like that that actually hold all the various attachment data for developers to work with. And then the composer framework that I was talking about is what actually merges all the data, the UI, and the business logic and how everything works, and it provides a medium for the security interface as well for the technology itself. So the framework is provided to you. It's not a black box. We provide the sources for the DLLs for the framework to you, so you are free to manage and add and enhance that framework as needed within your environments for some of the new features that you might add for these migrated apps. If you do buy the license from us. So Matt, that's a pretty a high-level overview of the process and how everything works. So do you want to go to the Q&A session?
Thank you, Suresh. That was great. Yeah, what we'll do now is open it up for the question and answer session. So just a reminder, use the Q&A button. That's the one with the little question mark in it. Now, I'm not sure if this will be the same for the users as it is for me, the panelists. It's up in the top right-hand corner. It's one of the tabs. But we'll give you a minute to start posting questions, and then Suresh and I will start going through that. All right, we're going to go ahead and start going through the questions. The first one is, what versions of notes does the tool convert? So actually, I know the sweet spot for it is Notes 6, 5, and 7?
Yeah, Notes 6, 5, and 7, and then any of those applications converted to Notes 8. What we don't support is any of the custom Notes 8 design objects that you might have embedded within these applications. So if you have a Notes 6, 5, 7 applications migrated and no additional Notes 8 features implemented within these applications, like edge pages and things like that, we do support all that.
Great. All right, next question. You mentioned the Composer framework or the runtime. What is the licensing for that? So as Suresh had mentioned, that's actually, you get the source code to that as part of the project. And there's really, so kind of to give you what the different structures or engagement models are, there's two basic ones. One is where you license the tool, the conversion tool, and that's licensed per NSF. And when you license the tool, you get that Composer framework that has all those .NET classes that, as Suresh mentioned, helps recreate all the functionality that was in your Lotus Notes framework, if you will. And so you get all of that. There's no additional cost to it, but the licensing of the tool per NSF. There's annual support that you can get on the tool, and then there's training that goes with that as well. The training is a 3.5-day course. It can be held at our headquarters here in Roseville, California, or we do it on site for customers that have several people that want to go through the conversion, and it walks you through how to convert, how to handle the to-dos that Suresh was talking about, and basically make you successful in your migration project. And of course, we offer consulting services around your projects as well to assist you. So that's the one model where you license the tool. The other model is where you have us do the conversion for you as a service. And there's some different options. We have some customers who basically say, look, my guys are really busy, and we would like you to handle the conversion. And so what we do is we'll do the conversion all the way through getting it to compile and doing basic development testing so that it runs, and then hand it over to you to do your unit testing and user acceptance testing. And as part of that, we'll resolve any issues that come out of the testing. So that's one way. One option in the service, where we convert it for you as a service. For some customers, though, and obviously that's the most expensive model, where we're doing everything up except for your unit testing and user acceptance testing. But then some customers will go a little bit cheaper version of that, where they just have us do the basic conversion, get it to compile, and then hand it over to you to handle the to-dos, the things that the manual effort that we identify as part of the analysis, and then we give you training on how to do that, and we can assist you with that as well. But that's another alternative in that service model. When we do these, it's as a service. It's a fixed price typically, and again, because of the analyzer, we can actually run these through the analyzer, and we're able to give you that fixed price estimate for it. Next question: does it support Visual Studio 2012 and the .NET 4.5 framework? The answer to that is no at this time.
Yeah, we haven't tested it out on 12 or with 4.5. It's just a matter of finding the time within our roadmap to get that in place.
Right. We do, by the way. This is a tool that we put out new releases on, and for support of the latest platforms, but we don't have any customers trying to deploy into production on .NET 4.5 at this time, so that just isn't where we've spent the time for the latest release. But as customers get there, I'm sure we'll be looking at that. Again, for those that don't remember from the current platform support of the current release, it's the .NET 4.0 framework and Visual Studio 2010?
2010.
Yeah, 2010. All right, any other questions? Okay, it looks like that's all the questions we have right now. What we'll do is we'll start wrapping this up, but if someone has another one, please feel free to post it. Suresh and I want to thank you for attending the webinar. We hope you found it useful. When you exit the webinar, a little 3-question survey will come up. Let us know what you thought. Was it what you were expecting? Is there certain things that you'd like to see in future topics? We do these webinars every other month, basically. Also, we do record these. And so we'll make the recorded version of this available in the next day or so. And so you can find that on our website or on YouTube. And let me go back to I'm going to go back to the presentation here and bring up the website for you so you know how to get to it. It's composertechnologies.com. You'll also find other helpful information on there on the product and our partners and customers and so forth. But if you go to the resources section, you'll find in events and webinars, and you can see the recorded webinars there. Now, we had a little problem with the recording at the beginning. For some reason, it got paused during my presentation portion, and so I didn't notice it because I was busy going through the presentation, but I was able to get it unpaused before Suresh's demo portion. So we will have this recording available for you. And if you have any questions, I'm sure your appropriate contact here at Composer Technologies will be following up with you to see if you have any questions and if there's further interest in the solution. So thanks again and have a great day.
Thank you.